Today we're going to find out if the Tower 200 case supports microATX motherboards or not. Documentation from Thermaltake online and in the manual show mini-ITX only. Really, I have no idea whether this thing will fit or not. Again, I suspect it will, but let's find out. All right, so I've got that motherboard swapped over, and as you can see, the answer is yes. This case will accept a microATX motherboard. So one problem getting this installed that I didn't really anticipate, and it really was more just I hadn't really fully thought through it, is on this microATX motherboard, most of the cable connections, your front panel I/O, your USB connections, HD audio, things like that. From the perspective of this case, they're all over here on the left-hand side. But that creates a bit of a challenge in this case, only because it butts right up against where the panel goes here. Now, it fits well enough, but I had to get a little bit creative in how to run those cables. So as you can see here in some of the photos, there really is nowhere for the cables to come out from underneath like they would on a normal setup. So I had to kind of go parallel into this space over here and get them connected. The only one I did run under was the front panel I/O connection, only because it's a very, very thin ribbon cable and it just fits underneath that motherboard nicely. The other cables here would tuck up under the motherboard, but the problem is it's such a tight fit. And that USB 3.0 cable, for example, it's a very thick cable. There's two of them. It's a thick connector. There's really just no adequate way to make that bend back around on itself without this being in the way. So the best way I found to do it was to kind of just tuck it in up through the top, thread it, and kind of keep it in this plane right here. All that being said, even though that was a bit of an obstacle and something I hadn't really anticipated, I was totally able to get it done. It wasn't like you couldn't get it done. So one thing you need to think about if you're considering a microATX board in this particular case is to determine which position is your first PCI Express slot in. Now, that will dictate which slot in the case it's going to plug into. So this particular microATX board I'm putting in, this Gigabyte B550M board, the PCI Express slot is in the second position, meaning when I put the GPU in, it screws into the second slot, leaving the first slot empty. Now, that's not a problem with 2-slot GPUs, of course, but if you're going to consider a 3-slot GPU, that may or may not interfere with the left side of this case. Now, I did put in this RTX 2070 card by EVGA, which is an old card by today's standards, but it does fit in there, but it rubs right up against these cables, making it a little bit difficult. And if you get a loose cable or something in there, it could interfere with the fans, and it puts it pretty close to that left side panel, which may or may not interfere with the airflow to this card. So mini-ITX, of course, is going to have the slot in the first position just based on how small it is, but microATX, you'll find them in the second position, such as this board here. But you can find them with slots in the first position. You're just going to need to do a little bit of research and see what position your slot is in on the board that you're looking at. I looked at some AMD 650 boards, and they were in the first position, but you probably find a mixture of both there. But you will need to consider this if you're going to do a 3-slot GPU, in my opinion. The cable's down on the bottom. The only really one that I've got left is the power cable, and there's that one big slot down here in the case. So there's plenty of room for cables to come up from underneath on a microATX motherboard. I don't have any SATA drives in this, so that would be an additional challenge, but there's plenty of room for that. So compared to the mini-ITX board, over here on the right-hand side, the microATX board does not extend any further out to the right, so there really was no additional challenges over here on the right. The AIO still fits perfectly, the fans, all the clearances are the same really. It extends further down over here. Other than that, there's really no issues that I can see as far as putting a microATX motherboard in here. Let me know in the comments below if other microATX boards are maybe a little bit different. Hopefully this will give you an idea if you're thinking about putting a microATX board in here. Yes, you can do it. Just pay kind of special attention to the layout of your board and what challenges that might pose over here. And if you're going to put a 3-slot video card in there, you might pay special consideration to any challenges that might cause over here on the left-hand side. If you happen to do it, let me know what your experiences are with it. Anyways, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching.